This isn't a mistake, Mrs. Harlow. Your card was used to book a suite at the Starlight Hotel for next month, the customer service representative insists, her voice tinged with disbelief. I grip the phone tighter, my knuckles turning white. That's impossible. I haven't made any hotel reservations. The charge is for $1,200, ma'am. It was processed yesterday at 3:42 p.m. My stomach lurches. Yesterday at 3:42 p.m., I was elbow deep in a patient's chest cavity, assisting with open-heart surgery. There's no way I could have made that booking. Can you tell me who made the reservation? I ask, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm sorry, Mrs. Harlow, but I can only discuss that information with the cardholder. I am the cardholder. I snap, frustration bubbling over. The reservation was made under the name Gideon Harlow. The world tilts on its axis. Gideon, my husband, the stay-at-home dad who claims he can barely find time to shower between taking care of our daughter and managing the household. I see. I managed to choke out. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. Please cancel the reservation and flag any future charges from that hotel. I hang up and stare at the wall, my mind racing. My name is Maggie Harlow, and I've just discovered that my husband of 15 years might be leading a double life. The front door slams, jolting me from my thoughts. Lila, my 16-year-old daughter, stomps into the kitchen, her face a storm cloud of teenage angst. Mom, you won't believe what Dad did, she fumes, dropping her backpack on the counter. I brace myself. What happened, sweetie? He forgot to pick me up from soccer practice. Again, I had to bum a ride from Jess's mom. I clench my jaw, anger simmering beneath the surface. Did you try calling him? Lila rolls her eyes. Of course. It went straight to voicemail. He's probably napping again. The air quotes around napping make my heart clench. Has Lila noticed something off about her father's behavior too? I'm sorry, honey. I'll talk to him when he gets home. Don't bother, Lila mutters, grabbing an apple from the fruit bowl. He'll just make up some lame excuse like always. As she retreats to her room, I'm left alone with my thoughts and the damning evidence of that hotel reservation. I pull out my phone and open my banking app, scrolling through recent transactions. My blood runs cold. There, nestled between grocery store purchases and utility bills, are a series of charges I don't recognize. A high-end jewelry store, an upscale restaurant, and now the Starlight Hotel. The pieces start to fall into place, forming a picture I don't want to see. Gideon's sudden interest in his appearance. The late-night work calls from the PDA. The lingering scent of unfamiliar perfume on his clothes. I've been so focused on my career, on being the family's breadwinner, that I've missed the signs right in front of me. The garage door rumbles open, announcing Gideon's arrival. I quickly close the banking app and plaster on a smile as he walks in, looking disheveled but oddly energized. Hey, babe, he says, leaning in for a kiss. I turn my cheek at the last second, his lips grazing my skin. Where were you? I ask, trying to keep my voice neutral. Lila needed a ride home from soccer practice. Gideon's eyes widen for a fraction of a second before he recovers. Oh shit. I completely forgot. I was, helping Daphne with some PDA stuff. Lost track of time. Daphne, the vivacious blonde who always seems to be touching Gideon's arm at school events. My stomach churns. It's fine, I lie. I'm sure Lila understands. Gideon nods, relief washing over his face. He heads upstairs to shower, leaving me alone with the weight of my suspicions. I stare at the phone in my hand, the evidence of Gideon's betrayal burning a hole in my pocket. In that moment, I make a decision. I won't confront him. Not yet. First, I need proof. And when I get it, I'll make sure Gideon Harlow regrets ever taking me for granted. The school gymnasium buzzes with chatter as parents and teachers mill about, discussing fundraisers and upcoming events. I scan the crowd, searching for Gideon. He'd insisted on coming separately, claiming he needed to set up the refreshment table. Now, 30 minutes into the event, he's nowhere to be seen. Maggie! So glad you could make it. I turn to see Daphne sauntering towards me, her perfectly coiffed blonde hair bouncing with each step. My eyes are immediately drawn to her wrist, where a glittering diamond bracelet catches the light. My breath catches. It's identical to the one listed on our credit card statement. Daphne, I manage, forcing a smile. That's a beautiful bracelet. She beams, holding out her arm for inspection. Isn't it gorgeous? It was a gift from a dear friend. The pause before dear friend is minute, but it speaks volumes. I feel sick. It must be quite a friend, I say, struggling to keep my voice light. Those diamonds look expensive. Daphne's smile falters for a moment before she recovers. Oh, you know how it is. Some people just have exquisite taste. Before I can respond, Gideon appears at her side, slightly out of breath. Sorry I'm late, he says, not meeting my eyes. Got held up with the refreshments. I notice a smudge of lipstick on his collar, the exact shade Daphne is wearing. No worries, Daphne chirps, her hand lingering on Gideon's arm a beat too long. I was just admiring Maggie's outfit. Isn't she lovely? Gideon nods absently, his gaze darting around the room. Yeah, sure. Listen, we should probably start the meeting. As they walk away, heads bent close in conversation, I feel a presence at my side. It's Lila, her face a mix of confusion and disgust. Mom, she whispers, did you see that? I nod, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. Dad's being weird, Lila continues. And that Daphne woman is always hanging around him. Do you think? I squeeze her hand, cutting off her train of thought. Let's not jump to conclusions, sweetie. I'm sure there's an explanation. But even as I say the words, I know they're a lie. The evidence is mounting, and I can no longer ignore the truth staring me in the face. The meeting drags on, a blur of budget discussions and volunteer sign-ups. I barely hear a word, my mind racing with possibilities and plans. When it finally ends, Gideon makes a beeline for the exit. I've got to run, he says, not quite meeting my eyes. PDA stuff. Don't wait up. Before I can protest, he's gone, leaving me alone with Lila in the emptying gymnasium. This is bullshit, Lila mutters, kicking at a stray balloon. I'm too drained to chastise her language. Let's go home, honey. As we drive, Lila's words from earlier echo in my head. Dad's being weird. She's noticed too. How long has this been going on? How blind have I been? At home, I pull out my laptop and start digging. Credit card statements, phone records, emails. Anything that might give me concrete proof of Gideon's infidelity. With each discovery, my anger grows, fueled by a sense of betrayal so deep it threatens to consume me. A text from Gideon pings on my phone. Working late. Don't wait up. I stare at the message, my vision blurring with unshed tears. This man who vowed to love and cherish me is systematically dismantling our life together. And for what? A fling with a vapid PDA mom? In that moment, something inside me hardens. I won't be a victim. I won't let Gideon destroy what we've built. If he wants to play games, I'll show him just how outmatched he is. I pick up my phone and dial a number I haven't used in years. Ronan? It's Maggie. I need your help. As I outline my suspicions to Gideon's uncle, a plan begins to take shape. Gideon thinks he's being clever, but he has no idea what's coming. By the time I'm done, he'll wish he'd never even looked at Daphne. The game is on and I intend to win. The neon sign of Le Petit Bistro flickers in the twilight as I slouch lower in my rental car. It's been 3 hours since Gideon left for another late-night PDA meeting. 3 hours of me tailing him through the city, my heart pounding with each turn. He pulls into the restaurant's parking lot, and I hold my breath as a familiar blonde steps out of a sleek convertible to meet him. Daphne. My suspicions confirmed, I feel a cold fury settle in my chest. I watch as Gideon embraces her, his hands lingering on her waist. They share a kiss that's far from chaste before heading inside. My fingers tremble as I reach for my phone, snapping photos of their intimate exchange. Got you, I whisper, my voice thick with emotion. I consider storming in, confronting them both in a dramatic scene worthy of a soap opera. But Ronan's words echo in my mind. Patience, Maggie. Gather your evidence. Make it ironclad. So I wait, each minute an eternity. I imagine them laughing over wine, sharing secret smiles, while I sit alone in a cold car, my world crumbling around me. 2 hours later, they emerge, slightly disheveled and giddy with wine. I capture more photos as they say goodbye, Gideon's hands roaming places they have no business being. As Daphne drives away, Gideon checks his watch and swears. He jumps in his car and speeds off, likely rushing home to maintain his charade of devoted husband and father. I follow at a distance, my mind racing. How long has this been going on? How many lies has he told? How many times has he touched me after being with her? When we reach our neighborhood, I park a block away and wait. 10 minutes later, I enter our house, steeling myself for the performance of a lifetime. Gideon's sprawled on the couch, feigning sleep. His shirt is rumpled, and I catch a whiff of unfamiliar perfume as I pass. Hey, I say softly, playing the role of unsuspecting wife. Long meeting. He stirs, blinking up at me with false innocence. Yeah, budget stuff. Boring as hell. How was your night? Oh, the usual. Helped Lila with homework, caught up on some paperwork. Lied through my teeth. Followed my cheating husband. Photographed his infidelity. The usual. Gideon nods, already losing interest. I'm beat. Heading to bed. As he climbs the stairs, I feel a surge of rage so potent it nearly chokes me. How dare he? How dare he lie to my face, sleep in our bed, after what he's done? I wait until I hear the shower running before I retreat to my home office. With shaking hands, I upload the photos to my computer, each image a dagger to my heart. There's no denying it now. No explaining it away. The evidence is clear as day on my screen. A soft knock interrupts my thoughts. Lila peeks in, her eyes red-rimmed. Mom, is everything okay? I quickly minimize the photos. Of course, sweetie. Why do you ask? She hesitates, then blurts out. I saw Dad's car at Le Petit Bistro tonight. With Daphne's car. My heart sinks. Oh, Lila. It's true, isn't it? She whispers. He's cheating on you. I consider lying, protecting her from the ugly truth. But looking into her eyes, I see a young woman who deserves honesty. Yes, I admit, my voice barely audible. I'm afraid it is. Lila's face crumples, and I pull her into a fierce hug. We cry together, mourning the loss of the family we thought we had. When the tears subside, Lila pulls back, her jaw set in a determined line that mirrors my own. What are we going to do? I think of the photos on my computer, of Ronan's offer of help, of the righteous anger burning in my veins. We're going to make it right, I tell her, my resolve strengthening. Your father thinks he can have his cake and eat it too, but he's about to learn that actions have consequences. As Lila nods, a mix of sadness and determination in her eyes, I know we're in this together. Gideon's web of lies is about to unravel, and I'll be damned if I let him hurt us any more than he already has. The game has changed. Now, it's not just about exposing the truth. It's about reclaiming our dignity and securing our future. And I'm ready to play for keeps. The photos burn a hole in my pocket as I pace the living room, waiting for Gideon to return from his latest PDA meeting. My hands shake, a mixture of rage and nervous energy coursing through my veins. Lila's upstairs, headphones on, trying to drown out the impending storm. The front door opens and Gideon saunters in, whistling. The sound grates on my nerves like nails on a chalkboard. Hey, babe, he says, leaning in for a kiss. I step back, my skin crawling at the thought of his lips on mine. We need to talk, I say, my voice steely. His brow furrows in feigned concern. Is everything okay? I laugh, a harsh, bitter sound. No, Gideon. Everything is not okay. I pull out the photos, spreading them across the coffee table like a macabre fan of playing cards. Gideon's face drains of color as he recognizes himself and Daphne in various compromising positions. Maggie, I can explain. Save it, I snap. I've heard enough of your lies. He switches tactics, his expression hardening. You followed me? What? You don't trust me now. Trust you? I scoff. You've been cheating on me, spending our money on your mistress, and you have the audacity to talk about trust? Gideon's eyes narrow. Maybe if you weren't so focused on your career, I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere for companionship. The words hit me like a physical blow. Are you seriously blaming me for your infidelity? You're never home, Maggie, he shouts. You're always at the hospital, always putting your patients first. What about me? What about our family? Our family? I seethe. You mean the family you've been lying to? The daughter you've been neglecting while you gallivant around with your PDA floozy. The sound of a door slamming upstairs makes us both flinch. Lila storms down, her face a mask of fury. Is it true? She demands, glaring at Gideon. Have you been cheating on Mom? Gideon's face crumples. Lila, sweetie, it's complicated. It's not complicated, Lila cuts him off. It's simple. You're a liar and a cheat. Before Gideon can respond, the doorbell rings. I open it to find Tessa, Gideon's mother, standing on our porch with a disapproving frown. What's all this commotion? She asks, pushing past me into the house. Her eyes widen as she takes in the scene. The photos on the table, Gideon's guilty face, Lila's tears. What have you done now, Margaret? Tessa snaps, rounding on me. Always stirring up trouble with your accusations. I laugh incredulously. Are you kidding me? Your precious son has been having an affair, and you're blaming me. Tessa waves a dismissive hand. I'm sure it's all a misunderstanding. Gideon would never. It's true, Grandma, Lila interrupts, her voice shaking. Dad's been cheating. We have proof. Tessa blinks, momentarily stunned. Then her face hardens. Well, if that's the case, I'm sure Margaret drove him to it with her obsession with work. A man has needs, you know. The room falls silent, the weight of Tessa's words hanging in the air. I feel something inside me snap. Get out. I say, my voice low and dangerous. Both of you, get out of my house. Gideon starts to protest, but I cut him off. I want you gone by morning. Pack your things and leave. I'll have my lawyer contact you about divorce proceedings. You can't do this, Gideon sputters. This is my home too. Not anymore, I say firmly. You lost that right when you decided to betray us. Tessa grabs Gideon's arm, pulling him towards the door. Come on, darling. You don't need this. You can stay with me until this blows over. As they leave, I catch a glimpse of uncertainty in Gideon's eyes. Good. Let him worry. Let him wonder what's coming next. When the door closes behind them, Lila collapses into my arms, sobbing. I hold her tight, my own tears falling silently. What do we do now, Mom? She whispers. I stroke her hair, my resolve strengthening. We rebuild, sweetheart. We pick up the pieces, and we make a new life for ourselves. One where we don't need to rely on anyone but each other. As I comfort my daughter, my mind races with plans. Gideon thinks this is over, but he has no idea what's coming. With Ronan's help and my own determination, I'll make sure he regrets ever underestimating me. The war has just begun, and I intend to win. The sleek office of Ronan Harlow intimidates me as I sit across from him, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. Gideon's uncle has always been an enigma, wealthy, influential, and decidedly estranged from Tessa and her son. Now he might be my only hope. So Maggie, Ronan says, leaning back in his leather chair. You say Gideon's been unfaithful? I nod, swallowing hard. I have proof. Photos, credit card statements, everything. Ronan's eyes narrow. And you want my help too. What exactly? I want justice. I say, my voice stronger than I feel. I want Gideon to face consequences for what he's done to our family. A slow smile spreads across Ronan's face. I've always liked you, Maggie. You've got fire. It's about time someone put Gideon in his place. Relief washes over me. So you'll help. On one condition, Ronan says, leaning forward. When this is over, you let me offer you a job. That nursing career of yours is holding you back. I hesitate, caught off guard. I'll think about it. Ronan nods, satisfied. Now let's talk strategy. For the next hour, we plot and scheme. Ronan's connections are vast, his resources seemingly limitless. By the time I leave his office, a plan has taken shape, one that will not only expose Gideon's infidelity, but also strip him of the comfortable life he's grown accustomed to. At home, Lila is waiting, her face a mix of hope and anxiety. How did it go with Uncle Ronan? I pull her into a hug. It went well, sweetheart. We've got a plan. As I outline the details, Lila's eyes widen. Mom, that's intense. Are you sure about this? I pause, considering her words. Am I sure? The plan is ruthless, designed to hit Gideon where it hurts most, his reputation and his wallet. Part of me recoils at the thought of being so vindictive. But then I remember the look on Gideon's face when I confronted him, the way he tried to blame me for his infidelity. My resolve hardens. I'm sure, I tell Lila. Your father made his choice. Now he has to live with the consequences. The next few days are a whirlwind of activity. I meet with lawyers, gather evidence, and set the wheels in motion. Ronan's influence opens doors I never knew existed, providing me with ammunition I never thought I'd have. Through it all, Gideon remains oblivious. He calls and texts, alternating between apologies and accusations. I ignore them all, steeling myself for what's to come. One evening, as Lila and I are going over the final details of our plan, the doorbell rings. My heart races as I open it to find Tessa standing there, her face a mask of disapproval. Margaret, she says coldly. We need to talk. I let her in, bracing myself for another confrontation. But as soon as the door closes, Tessa's facade crumbles. Is it true? She whispers. Has Gideon really been with that woman? The vulnerability in her voice catches me off guard. For a moment, I see past the critical mother-in-law to the hurt and betrayed mother beneath. Yes, I say softly. It's true. Tessa collapses onto the couch, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Lila appears in the doorway, her eyes wide with surprise at her grandmother's breakdown. As I watch Tessa cry, a flicker of doubt creeps in. Is this plan too much? Am I letting my anger cloud my judgment? But then I think of Gideon's lies, of the years he's stolen from us, of the trust he's shattered. I think of Lila, forced to grow up too fast because of her father's selfishness. No, I decide. This isn't just about revenge. It's about justice, about reclaiming our lives and our dignity. I sit next to Tessa, placing a hesitant hand on her shoulder. I know this is hard, I say. But things are about to change. For all of us. Tessa looks up, her mascara-streaked face a question mark. What do you mean? I exchange a glance with Lila, who nods encouragingly. Taking a deep breath, I begin to explain our plan. As I speak, I can feel the momentum building. There's no turning back now. Gideon's day of reckoning is coming, and I'll be damned if I'm not the one to bring it about. The game is set. Now it's time to play. The morning Gideon leaves for his PDA retreat dawns bright and clear, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. I watch from the window as he loads his suitcase into the car, whistling cheerfully. If only he knew what awaited him upon his return. Are you sure about this, Mom? Lila asks, her voice trembling slightly. I turn to face my daughter, seeing the mixture of anticipation and fear in her eyes. It's too late to turn back now, sweetheart. Are you ready? She nods, squaring her shoulders. Let's do this. For the next few hours, we're a whirlwind of activity. We pack our essentials, carefully selecting what to take and what to leave behind. Each item feels weighted with memories, some cherished, others now tainted by Gideon's betrayal. As I place the last box in Ronan's waiting SUV, I pause to survey the house that's been our home for the past decade. It looks the same from the outside, but inside it's been hollowed out, much like our family. Everything's set, Ronan says, his voice uncharacteristically gentle. The movers will take care of the rest tomorrow. I nod, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. This is really happening. Back inside, I make my final preparations. On the dining room table, I arrange the evidence of Gideon's infidelity, credit card statements, phone records, and the damning photos. Beside them, I place a letter I've agonized over for days. Gideon, by the time you read this, Lila and I will be gone. I know about Daphne. I know about the lies, the stolen money, the broken promises. You've made your choice, and now I'm making mine. Don't try to find us. Don't try to explain. It's over. Maggie. P.S. I've taken the liberty of sharing some information with the PDA board and your mother. Enjoy your retreat. My hand shakes as I sign my name. Part of me still can't believe I'm doing this, the rational, forgiving part that's been my cornerstone for so long. But that part is being overridden by a newfound strength, a fierce determination to reclaim my life and protect my daughter. Mom! Lila calls from the doorway. It's time. I take one last look around the house, memories flashing through my mind like a bittersweet slideshow. The Christmas mornings, the birthday parties, the quiet evenings that once felt so perfect. All of it now overshadowed by Gideon's betrayal. As we drive away, I feel a mixture of grief and exhilaration. We're leaving behind more than just a house. We're shedding the weight of lies and disappointment, stepping into an uncertain but hopeful future. Ronan drives us to a sleek apartment building across town, one of his many real estate investments. It's yours for as long as you need, he says, handing me the keys. I've arranged for round-the-clock security, just in case. I raise an eyebrow. You think Gideon will cause trouble? Ronan's expression darkens. Let's just say I wouldn't put anything past him at this point. As we settle into our temporary home, my phone buzzes with a series of texts. They're from various PDA members expressing shock and outrage at the anonymous tip they've received about Gideon and Daphne's affair. I smile grimly, imagining the chaos unfolding at the retreat. Another text comes through, this one from Tessa. It's short but speaks volumes. I'm so sorry, Margaret. You deserved better. Lila peers over my shoulder. Grandma's on our side now? Looks like it, I say, still somewhat surprised by this turn of events. As night falls, I stand on the balcony of our new apartment, gazing out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Gideon is about to have his world turned upside down. Part of me feels a twinge of guilt at the devastation I've set in motion. But then I remember his lies, his callous disregard for our family, and my resolve hardens. No turning back now, I whisper to the night sky. Inside, Lila is curled up on the couch, scrolling through her phone with a mix of fascination and horror. Mom, it's blowing up on social media. Everyone knows. I join her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Are you okay? She nods, leaning into me. Yeah, it's weird and scary, but I'm glad we did it. He can't hurt us anymore. As we sit there on the precipice of our new life, I feel a sense of peace settling over me. The storm we've unleashed is just beginning, but for the first time in months, I'm not afraid. We're free, and whatever comes next, we'll face it together. The fallout is swift and merciless. Within hours of Gideon's return from his retreat, the carefully constructed facade of his life crumbles like a house of cards. I watch it unfold from the safety of our new apartment, my phone buzzing incessantly with updates. Lila sits beside me, her eyes wide as she scrolls through social media. "Mom, it's everywhere," she whispers. "Everyone's talking about Dad and Daphne." I nod, a mix of satisfaction and sadness washing over me. "How are you holding up, sweetheart?" Lila shrugs, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. "It's weird. I'm angry at Dad, but I also feel kind of sorry for him. Is that crazy?" I pull her close, kissing the top of her head. "No, it's not crazy. It's complicated. We can be angry and still care." My phone rings, it's Ronan. "You might want to turn on the local news," he says without preamble. We switch on the TV just in time to see Gideon stumbling out of our old house, looking disheveled and wild-eyed. A crowd of reporters swarms him, shouting questions about the affair and the misuse of PDA funds. "Mr. Harlow, is it true you've been embezzling money to fund your extramarital affair? Gideon, what do you have to say to the families you've betrayed?" Gideon pushes through the crowd, his face a mask of panic and rage. "No comment. This is all a misunderstanding." The camera pans to reveal Daphne trying to sneak out the back door, only to be confronted by another group of reporters. Her perfectly manicured image is in tatters, mascara streaking down her face as she shields herself from the cameras. Lila turns away, unable to watch anymore. I mute the TV, my heart racing. This is what I wanted, isn't it? To see Gideon face the consequences of his actions? So why do I feel this twinge of guilt? A knock at the door startles us both. I approach cautiously, peering through the peephole. To my surprise, it's Tessa. I open the door, bracing myself for accusations or pleas on Gideon's behalf. Instead, Tessa looks defeated. "May I come in?" she asks, her voice barely above a whisper. I nod, stepping aside to let her enter. Lila eyes her grandmother warily from the couch. Tessa takes a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. "I owe you both an apology," she says. "I was wrong about Gideon. About everything. I'm so sorry for not believing you, Margaret." The use of my full name, without a hint of condescension, takes me aback. "Thank you, Tessa," I say softly. "That means a lot." She turns to Lila, her eyes brimming with tears. "And you, my dear, can you ever forgive your foolish old grandmother?" Lila hesitates for a moment before standing and embracing Tessa. The sight of them hugging brings a lump to my throat. As we sit together, processing the chaos unfolding around us, my phone buzzes again. It's a text from Gideon. "How could you do this to me? To our family? I'll never forgive you for this." I stare at the message, a wave of anger washing over me. The audacity of him, to play the victim now. "What is it?" Lila asks, noticing my expression. I show her the text. Her face hardens. "He's unbelievable," she mutters. Tessa peers at the message, her lips thinning. "Oh, Gideon," she sighs. "You foolish, selfish boy." In that moment, something shifts. The last vestiges of doubt and guilt evaporate, replaced by a steely resolve. Gideon made his choices, and now he's facing the consequences. We don't owe him anything, not explanations, not forgiveness, not even a response. I delete the message without replying. "So, what happens now?" Lila asks, looking between Tessa and me. I take a deep breath, feeling lighter than I have in months. Now we move forward. We build a new life on our terms. Tessa nods, a hint of her old fire returning to her eyes. "And I'll be there to support you both, every step of the way. If you'll have me." As we sit there, 3 generations of women united by shared pain and newfound strength, I feel a sense of peace settling over me. The storm we've weathered has changed us all, but we've emerged stronger, wiser, and more connected than ever before. Outside, the media frenzy continues. Gideon's carefully constructed world is in shambles. But here, in this quiet apartment, we're building something new. A future free from lies and betrayal, founded on truth and mutual support. The road ahead won't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, I'm excited to see where it leads. 6 months have passed since the day we left Gideon behind, and our world has transformed in ways I never could have imagined. I stand in the kitchen of our new home, a modest but charming house that Ronan helped us secure, watching Lila chat animatedly with her friends in the backyard. She's throwing a small party to celebrate her acceptance into a prestigious summer internship program. The sound of her laughter, so rare in those final months with Gideon, now fills our home regularly. Tessa bustles in, arms laden with trays of snacks for the teenagers. "Margaret, dear, where shall I put these?" The easy familiarity between us still surprises me sometimes. Tessa has become an unexpected pillar of support, her previous criticisms replaced by genuine care and admiration. Over there is fine, Tessa. Thank you, I say, smiling warmly. As I turn back to the window, my phone buzzes. It's a text from Ronan. Turn on the news. Channel 5. With a sense of trepidation, I switch on the small TV in the corner. The headline makes my breath catch. Local man sentenced in PDA embezzlement scandal. There's Gideon, being led out of the courthouse in handcuffs. The reporter's voice fills the room. Gideon Harlow, former stay-at-home dad and PDA treasurer, has been sentenced to 3 years in prison for embezzling over $100,000 from the school's funds. His accomplice and mistress, Daphne Reeves, received 2 years probation and community service. I mute the TV, a complex mix of emotions washing over me. Part of me feels vindicated, seeing Gideon face the consequences of his actions. But there's also a twinge of sadness for the man I once loved, the father of my child. Tessa places a comforting hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing, Margaret. He brought this on himself. I nod, grateful for her understanding. I know. It's just not how I ever imagined our story ending. Endings are just new beginnings in disguise, she says sagely. Look at us. Who would have thought we'd be standing here like this a year ago? Her words ring true. Despite the pain and upheaval, this past year has brought unexpected blessings. My relationship with Lila has deepened, built on a foundation of honesty and mutual respect. I've reconnected with old friends and made new ones, no longer isolated by Gideon's controlling nature. And then there's my career. Taking Ronan up on his job offer was a leap of faith, but it's paid off beyond my wildest dreams. As the head nurse of his new state-of-the-art clinic, I'm able to help more people than ever while still maintaining a healthy work-life balance. The doorbell rings, pulling me from my reverie. It's Ronan, arriving fashionably late as usual. Uncle Ronan, Lila exclaims, rushing to greet him. As I watch them interact, I'm struck by how seamlessly he's integrated into our lives. He's become the positive male role model Lila desperately needed, and a steadfast friend to me. Later, as the party winds down and the last of Lila's friends depart, we gather in the living room. Lila, Tessa, Ronan, and me, our unconventional but fiercely loyal family unit. I propose a toast, Ronan says, raising his glass of sparkling cider, in solidarity with the underage Lila. To new beginnings, unexpected allies, and the strength to forge our own paths. We clink glasses, the simple act feeling like a victory celebration. As I look around at these faces, my daughter, glowing with excitement for her future, Tessa, radiating warmth and acceptance, Ronan, his eyes twinkling with pride, I'm overwhelmed with gratitude. This journey has been painful and challenging, but it's also been transformative. We've emerged stronger, wiser, and more tightly bonded than ever before. As the evening draws to a close and I prepare for bed, I catch sight of myself in the mirror. The woman staring back at me is different from the one who first discovered Gideon's betrayal. She's more confident, more resilient, with a hard-won wisdom in her eyes. I think of the letter I left for Gideon all those months ago, ending with "It's over." I was right, but not in the way I thought. What's over is the chapter of my life defined by his presence, by the need to fit into someone else's narrative. This new chapter? It's just beginning, and for the first time in years, I'm genuinely excited to see where the story goes. Marry me, Jade, because I can't bear the thought of you with anyone else. Elliot's words hung in the air, heavy with expectation. I stared at him, my mind racing. The restaurant around us faded into a blur of white tablecloths and flickering candles. Elliot, My voice trailed off. I couldn't find the words. He reached across the table, grasping my hand. I know your career means everything to you, but we can make this work. I promise. I looked into his eyes, seeing a mixture of hope and fear. My heart raced, torn between the comfort of his love and the allure of my hard-earned independence. My name is Jade, and I never thought I'd be here, on the precipice of such a life-altering decision. Yes, I heard myself say, almost in a whisper. Yes, I'll marry you. Elliot's face lit up with joy. He slipped a ring onto my finger, a diamond that caught the light, beautiful and somehow terrifying. As we left the restaurant, my phone buzzed. A text from my boss. Big project coming up. Need you to lead. I hesitated, then put the phone away. Elliot squeezed my hand. Everything okay? Fine, I lied, forcing a smile. Just work stuff. At home, I called my mother. Mom, I have news. Jade, what's wrong? Gloria's voice was instantly concerned. Nothing's wrong. Elliot proposed. I said yes. There was a pause, then a squeal of delight. Oh, honey, that's wonderful. When's the wedding? What are you wearing? Oh, we have so much to plan. I laughed, her excitement infectious. Mom, slow down. We just got engaged. I'm just so happy for you, sweetie. You deserve this. As we talked, I caught sight of my reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back at me looked different, engaged, soon to be married. Was I ready for this? The next morning, I woke to Elliot making breakfast. Good morning, fiancé, he said, grinning. Fiancé, I repeated, testing the word. It felt foreign on my tongue. As I sipped my coffee, Elliot said, I was thinking we should have dinner with my parents this weekend, to announce the engagement. I nearly choked. This weekend? Isn't that a bit soon? He frowned. Why wait? They'll be thrilled. I thought about Walter and Lorraine Mercer, with their traditional values and judgmental glances. Sure, I said, trying to sound enthusiastic. This weekend it is. At work, I threw myself into the new project, grateful for the distraction. My colleague Sarah noticed the ring immediately. Oh my God, Jade. Congratulations. She hugged me tightly. So, when's the big day? We haven't set a date yet, I said, suddenly feeling overwhelmed. Sarah's smile faltered. You okay? You don't seem very excited. I am, I insisted. It's just a lot to process. As I dove into work, my phone buzzed again. A text from Elliot. Mom's planning a big dinner for Saturday. Can't wait for you to be part of the family. I stared at the message, a knot forming in my stomach. Part of the family. The Mercer family. Was I ready for that? That night, as Elliot slept beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. I loved him, I truly did. But as I thought about the future, our future, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I touched the ring on my finger, cool and unfamiliar. It's just nerves, I whispered to myself. Everything will be fine. But as I finally drifted off to sleep, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered, Will it? The Mercer mansion loomed before us, a Victorian monstrosity that seemed to frown at our arrival. Elliot squeezed my hand reassuringly as we approached the front door. Ready? He asked. I nodded, forcing a smile. As I'll ever be. Walter Mercer opened the door, his stern face softening slightly at the sight of his son. Elliot, good to see you. His gaze shifted to me, eyes narrowing. Jade. Mr. Mercer, I said, extending my hand. He shook it briefly, his grip firm and cold. Lorraine appeared behind him, all pearls and perfume. There's my boy, she exclaimed, embracing Elliot. She turned to me, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Jade, dear. How lovely. As we entered the dining room, I couldn't help but feel like I was walking into a lion's den. The table was set with fine china and crystal, a clear reminder of the world I was marrying into. So, Jade, Lorraine began as we settled into our seats. Elliot tells us you're quite the career woman. I nodded, swallowing a bite of salad. Yes, I'm a project manager at. How fascinating, she interrupted, her tone suggesting it was anything but. And do you plan to continue working after the wedding? Elliot shifted uncomfortably beside me. I felt a flicker of annoyance at his silence. Of course, I replied firmly. My career is very important to me. Walter harumphed from the head of the table. In my day, a woman's most important job was taking care of her family. I bit my tongue, reminding myself to play nice. Times have changed, Mr. Mercer. Many women successfully balance career and family now. Lorraine's lips thinned. Perhaps. But surely you'll want to start a family soon? Elliot isn't getting any younger. Mom, Elliot protested weakly. I forced a laugh. We haven't really discussed that yet. We're just enjoying being engaged. The conversation mercifully shifted to wedding plans. Though Lorraine's pointed comments about traditional values and a proper family wedding grated on my nerves. As dessert was served, Walter cleared his throat. Elliot, my boy, have you given any more thought to joining the family business? Elliot tensed beside me. Dad, we've talked about this. I'm happy where I am. Nonsense, Walter scoffed. It's time you took on some real responsibility. You can't keep coasting along in that entry-level position forever. I frowned. Entry-level? Elliot had told me he was on track for a promotion. Actually, I interjected, Elliot's been working really hard. He's up for a big project next month that could lead to. Jade, Elliot cut me off, his voice strained. Let's not bore them with work talk. I stared at him, hurt and confused. Why was he dismissing my support? As we prepared to leave, Lorraine pulled me aside. Jade, dear, a word of advice. A happy marriage requires sacrifice. You might want to reconsider your priorities. I bristled at her words, but managed a polite nod. Thank you for your concern, Mrs. Mercer. In the car, The tension between Elliot and me was palpable. "Why didn't you tell me about the family business?" I asked. Elliot sighed. "It's complicated, Jade. My father's always pushing for things I don't want. And why did you stop me from defending you?" He shrugged. "It's easier to just let them talk sometimes." I fell silent, mulling over the evening. The Mercer's judgment, Elliot's passivity, the lies by omission, it all left a sour taste in my mouth. As we pulled into our driveway, Elliot reached for my hand. "Hey, it wasn't so bad, right? They'll warm up to you, I promise." I forced a smile, but inside doubts were growing. Was this the family I was marrying into? And more importantly, was Elliot the man I thought he was? As I lay in bed that night, Elliot's soft snores beside me, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing at the edge of a precipice, about to take a leap into the unknown. And for the first time since his proposal, I wasn't sure if I was ready to jump. The morning of my wedding day dawned bright and clear, but the knot in my stomach tightened with each passing hour. As I stood before the mirror in my white gown, my mother, Gloria, appeared behind me, her eyes glistening with tears. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," she said, her voice thick with emotion. I turned to face her, taking in the familiar scar that ran along her cheek, a reminder of the car accident that had nearly taken her from me years ago. "Thanks, Mom. I just wish." She squeezed my hand. "I know. Your father would have been so proud." A knock at the door interrupted our moment. It was Max, looking dapper in his suit. "Hey, Jade. You ready?" I nodded, forcing a smile. "As I'll ever be." The ceremony was a blur of faces, flowers, and promises. Elliot beamed at me as we exchanged vows, but I couldn't shake the nagging doubt that had taken root since our dinner with his parents. At the reception, I made my rounds, accepting congratulations and trying to ignore the whispers that seemed to follow in my wake. It wasn't until I overheard a conversation near the bar that I realized the source of the gossip. "Did you see the mother of the bride?" a woman's voice said, dripping with disdain. "That scar is simply ghastly. You'd think she'd have had it fixed before such an important day." I froze, recognizing the speaker as Lila, Elliot's sister. Her companion, another of Elliot's relatives, tittered in agreement. "I know," Lila continued. "It's a shame. Poor Elliot, having to look at that every holiday now." White-hot anger surged through me. I spun around, ready to confront them, but Elliot appeared at my side, oblivious to the tension. "There you are, darling," he said, pulling me close. "Come, my parents want a photo." I allowed myself to be led away, my mind reeling. How could Lila be so cruel? And why hadn't Elliot noticed? As we posed for pictures, Lorraine fussed over Elliot's tie. "There, perfect," she cooed. "Now you look like a proper Mercer man." I bristled at her words, remembering her comments about my career. Elliot just smiled, basking in his mother's approval. The rest of the reception passed in a haze of toasts, dances, and forced smiles. I kept catching glimpses of Lila, whispering and giggling with her friends, occasionally casting glances in my direction. As the night wore on, I found myself at a table with Gloria, both of us taking a moment of respite from the festivities. "You okay, honey?" she asked, concern etching her features. "You seem distracted." I hesitated, not wanting to burden her with my worries on what should be a joyous day. "I'm fine, Mom. Just tired." She studied me for a moment, unconvinced. "You know you can tell me anything, right? If something's bothering you." Before I could respond, Elliot appeared, flushed with champagne and excitement. "Come on, Mrs. Mercer," he said, pulling me to my feet. "Time for our last dance." As we swayed on the dance floor, Elliot's arms around me, I tried to recapture the love and certainty I'd felt when he proposed. But all I could think about was Lila's cruel words, Lorraine's judgmental gaze, and the growing fear that I'd made a terrible mistake. "I love you," Elliot murmured in my ear. "I love you too," I replied automatically, the words feeling hollow in my mouth. As the music faded and guests began to depart, I caught sight of Max across the room. He met my gaze, a question in his eyes. I looked away quickly, unable to face the concern I saw there. Later, as Elliot and I prepared to leave for our honeymoon, I hugged Gloria tightly. "I love you, Mom," I whispered fiercely. "I love you too, sweetheart," she replied. "Be happy." As we drove away, rice and confetti trailing behind us, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was leaving more than just my single life behind. With each mile that passed, the weight of my new reality settled over me like a shroud. I was Mrs. Elliot Mercer now. But at what cost? 6 months into our marriage, the honeymoon phase had long since faded. I stood in our kitchen, staring at the invitation to yet another Mercer family dinner, my stomach churning with dread. Jade, have you RSVP'd to Mother's dinner yet? Elliot called from the living room. I sighed, setting down my coffee mug. Not yet. I've got a big presentation that week, remember? Elliot appeared in the doorway, frowning. Can't you reschedule? You know how important these dinners are to my family. And you know how important this project is to my career, I countered, frustration building. He ran a hand through his hair, exasperated. Jade, we've talked about this. Maybe it's time to start thinking about scaling back at work. I froze, disbelief washing over me. Excuse me. It's just, Mother was saying the other day that it might be nice if you were home more. You know, to start thinking about our future. The implication hung heavy in the air. Children. The topic we'd been dancing around for months. Elliot, we agreed we'd wait a few years before even considering kids. I said, my voice tight. He shrugged, not meeting my eyes. Things change. We're not getting any younger, and what? Your mother thinks it's time. I snapped, anger flaring. Elliot's face hardened. Don't talk about her like that. She only wants what's best for us. I laughed bitterly. For us? Or for you? The argument escalated, ending with Elliot storming out and me left seething in the kitchen. As I aggressively wiped down the counters, my phone buzzed. A text from Lorraine. Darling, do try to make it to dinner. We have so much to discuss about your role in the family. I nearly threw the phone across the room. At work the next day, I buried myself in the project, grateful for the distraction. As I was leaving the office, I ran into Max, my old friend who worked as a police officer in the building next door. Jade, long time no see, he said, his warm smile a balm to my frayed nerves. We grabbed coffee, and I found myself pouring out my frustrations. Max listened intently, his brow furrowed with concern. Jade, I hate to see you like this. This isn't the confident woman I grew up with. His words hit home, and I felt tears prick at my eyes. I don't know what to do, Max. I feel like I'm losing myself. He squeezed my hand reassuringly. You're stronger than you think, Jade. Don't let anyone dim your light. That evening, I returned home to find Elliot and Lila in deep conversation on our couch. They fell silent as I entered, exchanging guilty looks. What's going on? I asked, suspicion rising. Elliot cleared his throat. Lila was just giving me some advice. About us. I turned to Lila, whose smug expression made my blood boil. Oh, and what pearls of wisdom does my sister-in-law have about my marriage? Lila stood, smoothing her designer dress. Just that sometimes sacrifices need to be made for family. Isn't that right, Elliot? Elliot nodded, avoiding my gaze. Lila thinks, maybe we should reconsider your work situation. For the sake of our future. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. You've been talking to her about our private life? Don't be dramatic, Jade, Lila said, her voice sickly sweet. We're family now. There are no secrets. As they continued to talk, their voices faded into background noise. I saw with sudden clarity the web I'd become entangled in: Lorraine's manipulation, Lila's jealousy, and Elliot's weakness. That night, as Elliot slept beside me, I lay awake, my mind racing. The woman I'd been before the wedding felt like a distant memory. But somewhere inside, a spark of defiance flickered to life. I was Jade Thornton before I was Mrs. Mercer. And it was time to remember who that woman was. The Mercer family's annual summer barbecue was in full swing, the sprawling backyard of their mansion filled with laughter and chatter. I stood by the buffet table, nursing a glass of wine and trying to ignore the suffocating feeling of being an outsider in my own family. Elliot appeared at my side, his smile strained. Having fun, darling? Before I could answer, Walter's booming voice cut through the crowd. Elliot, my boy. Come here, I want you to meet someone. As Elliot dutifully trotted off, I caught Lila's smirk from across the lawn. She was in her element, holding court with a group of cousins, no doubt spreading more gossip about me. Lorraine glided over, her perfectly coiffed hair unmoved by the summer breeze. Jade, dear, why don't you help me in the kitchen? We need more of my famous potato salad. I gritted my teeth, knowing it wasn't a request. In the kitchen, as I mechanically stirred the bowl, Lorraine launched into her usual passive-aggressive commentary. You know, Jade, I was speaking with Mrs. Hawthorne earlier. Her daughter just had the most adorable twins. Wouldn't it be lovely if you and Elliot? I set the spoon down with more force than necessary. Lorraine, we've discussed this. Elliot and I aren't ready for children yet. She pursed her lips. Well, dear, you're not getting any younger. And with your career, I just worry you're missing out on life's true joys. I bit back a retort, reminding myself to keep the peace. But as we rejoined the party, I felt my resolve crumbling. Walter cornered me by the grill, his imposing figure blocking my escape. "So, Jade, Elliot tells me you're still working those long hours. Don't you think it's time to start focusing on more important things?" I forced a polite smile. "My career is important to me, Walter." He waved a dismissive hand. "Nonsense. A woman's place is in the home, supporting her husband. Isn't that right, Elliot?" I turned, not realizing Elliot had joined us. He shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. "Well, Dad, times are different now." Walter scoffed. "Different? In my day, we knew the value of family. Elliot, it's time you put your foot down. Tell your wife to quit that job and start being a proper Mercer woman." The silence that followed was deafening. I stared at Elliot, willing him to defend me, to stand up to his father. But he remained silent, his eyes fixed on his shoes. Something inside me snapped. "I think I can speak for myself, Walter," I said, my voice sharp. "My career isn't just a hobby. It's part of who I am." Walter's face reddened. "Now see here, young lady." "No, you see here," I interrupted, years of pent-up frustration pouring out. "I won't be bullied into giving up my dreams. Not by you, not by Lorraine, and certainly not by Elliot." The party had gone quiet, all eyes on our confrontation. Lila stood nearby, her expression a mix of shock and glee. I turned to Elliot, my voice breaking. "Are you going to say anything? Or are you going to let your father disrespect me?" Again. Elliot opened his mouth, then closed it, looking torn. His silence was all the answer I needed. "I see," I said quietly. Then, louder. "Well, I think I've overstayed my welcome. Thank you all for a lovely afternoon." I strode towards the house, ignoring the whispers and stares. In our bedroom, I threw clothes into a suitcase, tears blurring my vision. Elliot burst in. "Jade, wait. Where are you going?" I zipped up the suitcase, my hands shaking. "Home. To my mother's. I can't do this anymore, Elliot. I won't lose myself to please your family." "But we can work this out," he pleaded. I paused at the door, looking back at the man I'd thought would be my partner in life. "Can we? Because from where I'm standing, you've already chosen your side." As I drove away from the Mercer mansion, my wedding ring heavy on my finger, I felt a strange mix of grief and relief. The life I'd thought I wanted was crumbling around me, but for the first time in months, I could breathe. A week after I left Elliot, I sat in my childhood bedroom at my mother's house, staring at my phone. 17 missed calls from Elliot. 23 text messages. I hadn't responded to any of them. A soft knock on the door broke my reverie. "Jade, honey." My mother's voice was gentle. "Elliot's here." My heart raced. "Tell him I don't want to see him. He says he's not leaving until you talk to him." I sighed, steeling myself. "Fine. I'll be down in a minute." Elliot stood in the living room, looking disheveled and exhausted. When he saw me, his eyes lit up with hope. "Jade," he breathed. "Thank God. I've been so worried." I crossed my arms, keeping my distance. "What do you want, Elliot?" He took a step towards me, then seemed to think better of it. "I want you to come home. We can work this out, I promise." I laughed bitterly. "Work what out? The fact that you let your family walk all over me? That you didn't stand up for me when your father insulted me in front of everyone?" Elliot ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. "You know how my father is. I didn't want to make a scene." "A scene?" I repeated incredulously. "Your father publicly humiliated me, and you're worried about making a scene? That's not fair, Jade. You know how important family is to me. And what about me?" I shot back. "Aren't I your family now? Or do I always come second to your parents and Lila?" At the mention of Lila's name, Elliot flinched. I narrowed my eyes, a suspicion forming. "What's going on with Lila, Elliot? Why have you been confiding in her about our marriage?" He looked away, guilt written across his face. "She's my sister. She understands our family dynamics." "She understands?" I scoffed. "She's been feeding your doubts about me from day one. Can't you see that?" Before Elliot could respond, the front door burst open. Lila stormed in, her face flushed with anger. "There you are," she spat at Elliot. "I can't believe you came crawling back to her." I stared at her in disbelief. "How dare you barge into my mother's house?" Lila ignored me, focusing on Elliot. "After everything we've talked about, after all the plans we made." "Lila, stop," Elliot pleaded, panic in his eyes. But Lila was on a roll, years of pent-up jealousy and resentment pouring out. "You promised me, Elliot. You said once Jade was out of the picture, we could finally be together. That you'd take your rightful place in the family business, with me by your side." The room fell silent. I felt as if all the air had been sucked out of my lungs. "What is she talking about, Elliot?" I whispered. Elliot's face crumpled. "Jade, I can explain." But Lila wasn't finished. She turned to me, her eyes gleaming with malice. Did you really think you belonged in our world? You were never good enough for Elliot or our family. I made sure he saw that. I staggered back, the full weight of the betrayal hitting me. You've been manipulating this entire situation. Both of you. Elliot reached for me. Jade, please. It's not what you think. I jerked away from his touch. Don't. Just. Don't. Lila laughed, the sound cold and cruel. Oh, come on, Jade. Did you really think a career-obsessed nobody like you could ever fit into our family? I did you a favor. Something inside me snapped. Years of enduring snide comments, of trying to fit into a world that never wanted me, of compromising myself for a man who couldn't even stand up for me. It all came rushing to the surface. Get out, I said, my voice low and dangerous. Both of you. Get out of my mother's house. Get out of my life. Elliot's face fell. Jade, please. I love you. I met his gaze, feeling nothing but a cold, empty void where my love for him used to be. No, Elliot. You love the idea of me. The version of me your family wanted. But that person doesn't exist. As Elliot and Lila left, their voices raised in argument, I sank onto the couch, my whole body shaking. My mother appeared, wrapping her arms around me. Oh, sweetheart, she murmured. I'm so sorry. I leaned into her embrace, feeling both shattered and strangely liberated. The life I had built with Elliot lay in ruins around me. But for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. The days following Elliot and Lila's dramatic exit blurred together. I threw myself into work, grateful for the distraction, but the weight of betrayal hung heavy on my shoulders. One evening, as I sat on my mother's porch, staring blankly at the setting sun, a familiar voice broke through my reverie. Thought I might find you here. I looked up to see Max, my childhood friend, standing at the bottom of the steps. His police uniform was rumpled, his expression a mix of concern and something I couldn't quite place. Max, I said, managing a weak smile. What are you doing here? He climbed the steps, settling beside me on the porch swing. Your mom called. She's worried about you. I sighed, leaning back. I'm fine. Max raised an eyebrow. Really? Because you look like hell, Jade. A laugh escaped me, surprising us both. Always the charmer, Max. His face softened. Want to talk about it? And suddenly I did. The whole story came pouring out. The proposal, the wedding, the slow erosion of my self-esteem, and finally, the devastating revelation of Elliot and Lila's betrayal. Max listened intently, his jaw clenching as I recounted Lila's cruel words. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. I wish I could say I'm surprised, he finally said. I turned to him, confused. What do you mean? Max ran a hand through his hair, looking uncomfortable. Look, there's something you should know about the Mercers. Specifically about Lorraine. My heart rate picked up. What about her? A few years back, there was an incident. Nothing that made the papers, but... He hesitated. Lorraine's behavior drove Elliot's previous fiancée to attempt suicide. I felt the blood drain from my face. What? Max nodded grimly. The girl's name was Sarah. Sweet kid, a lot like you actually. Career-focused, independent. Lorraine. She didn't approve. Started playing mind games, turning the family against her. By the end, Sarah was a shell of herself. I remembered the whispers at family gatherings, the vague references to Elliot's troubled ex. It all suddenly made horrifying sense. Why didn't anyone tell me? I whispered. The Mercers are good at keeping secrets. And honestly, I think most people were too afraid of Lorraine to speak up. A cold fury began to build in my chest. So they just let history repeat itself? Let me walk into that snake pit. Max reached out, squeezing my hand. I'm sorry, Jade. I should have said something sooner. I didn't want to believe they'd do it again. I stood abruptly, pacing the porch. All this time, I thought there was something wrong with me. That I wasn't good enough, that I needed to try harder. There's nothing wrong with you, Jade, Max said firmly. The Mercers are the problem. They've been doing this for years, manipulating people, tearing families apart. I stopped pacing, a realization dawning. That's why you became a cop, isn't it? To protect people from families like the Mercers. Max nodded, a sad smile on his face. Someone has to stand up to them. In that moment, something shifted inside me. The hurt and betrayal were still there, but alongside them, a new emotion was taking root: determination. You're right, I said, my voice stronger than it had been in weeks. Someone does have to stand up to them. And I think it's time that someone was me. Max stood, his eyes searching mine. What are you thinking? A plan was already forming in my mind. I'm thinking it's time the truth about the Mercers came to light. All of it. Jade, Max said cautiously, The Mercers are powerful. This won't be easy. I met his gaze, feeling more like myself than I had in months. I know, but I'm done being a victim. It's time to fight back. Max studied me for a long moment, then nodded. All right, if you're sure about this, I'm with you. Whatever you need. As we stood there on the porch, the last rays of sunlight fading, I felt a surge of hope. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time since my ill-fated wedding day, I felt ready to face whatever came next. The Mercers had tried to break me. Instead, they'd made me stronger. And now they were about to learn just how strong I could be. 1 year later, I stood at the podium, surveying the packed auditorium. Journalists, community leaders, and familiar faces filled the seats. In the front row, my mother beamed proudly, her scar a badge of survival. Beside her sat Max, his supportive smile giving me strength. Thank you all for coming, I began, my voice steady. Today, we're here to announce the launch of the Phoenix Foundation, dedicated to supporting victims of emotional abuse and manipulation. As I spoke about the Foundation's mission, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought me here. The months following my separation from Elliot had been challenging, but they'd also been transformative. With Max's help, I'd gathered evidence of the Mercers' pattern of manipulation and abuse. Sarah, Elliot's ex-fiancée, had come forward with her story, along with others who'd been silenced by the family's influence. Our goal, I continued, is to provide resources, counseling, and legal support to those trapped in toxic family dynamics. No one should have to sacrifice their identity or dreams to fit someone else's mold. As I spoke, I noticed a commotion at the back of the auditorium. Elliot slipped in, looking haggard and uncertain. Our eyes met briefly, and I saw a mix of regret and admiration in his gaze. I nodded slightly, acknowledging his presence before continuing. The Mercer family's actions have finally come to light, I said, my voice growing stronger. Their company is under investigation for ethical violations, and Lorraine Mercer is facing charges for her role in Sarah's breakdown. A murmur rippled through the crowd. I took a deep breath, ready to deliver the final blow. But this isn't about revenge. It's about justice, healing, and preventing others from experiencing what we went through. It's about reclaiming our power and helping others do the same. As I concluded my speech, the auditorium erupted in applause. I stepped away from the podium, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. Max met me at the edge of the stage, enveloping me in a warm embrace. You did it, Jade, he whispered. I'm so proud of you. Later, as the crowd thinned, Elliot approached cautiously. Jade, I don't know what to say. I studied him, noting the dark circles under his eyes and the slump in his shoulders. You don't have to say anything, Elliot. Your actions speak for themselves. He nodded, looking pained. I know. I've made so many mistakes. But seeing you up there, so strong and determined, it made me realize how much I've lost. Not just you, but myself. For a moment, I felt a flicker of the old affection. But it was quickly replaced by a calm resolve. I hope you find your way, Elliot. But it won't be with me. As he walked away, Max appeared at my side. You okay? I turned to him, really looking at the man who'd stood by me through everything. Yeah, I am. Better than okay, actually. He grinned, that boyish smile I'd known since childhood. Good, because I was thinking, maybe we could grab dinner? To celebrate, I felt a warmth spread through my chest, a feeling of possibility I hadn't experienced in a long time. I'd like that, Max. I'd like that a lot. As we left the auditorium, hand in hand, I caught sight of my reflection in a window. The woman staring back at me was stronger, wiser, and more herself than she'd ever been. The Mercers had tried to break me, to mold me into their idea of perfection. Instead, they'd set me free. Walking into the warm evening air, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I was excited to see where it might lead. With Max by my side and my newfound purpose guiding me, I was ready to embrace whatever came next. The Phoenix Foundation was just the beginning. From the ashes of my old life, something beautiful and powerful had risen. And this time, nothing and no one would clip my wings again.